Why did humans lose their tails? Take a quick look behind you. No, seriously. There isn't much to see, is there? No long tail swaying from side to side, no extra limb helping you keep your balance, and probably no reason you've ever questioned why. But here's the strange part. Every single human being who has ever lived began life with the blueprint for a tail. In fact, for a brief moment inside your mother's womb, you actually had one. So, what happened? Did evolution simply decide that tails were no longer fashionable? Did our ancestors accidentally lose them? Or was giving up a tail one of the greatest bargains our species ever made? To answer that question, we need to travel back about 25 million years, long before humans existed. Our distant ancestors looked much more like monkeys than people, and almost all of them had tails. Those tails weren't decorations. They were survival tools. They acted like built-in balancing poles, helping animals run along branches, leap between trees, and avoid becoming lunch for something with much sharper teeth. If you spend your entire life high above the ground, a tail is almost as useful as having an extra hand. But evolution has a habit of changing the rules. Around 20 million years ago, a new group of primates appeared. They were the ancestors of modern apes, including gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and eventually us. Unlike many monkeys, these animals began spending more time climbing with their arms, hanging beneath branches, and supporting their weight using powerful shoulders instead of relying on a tail for balance. Little by little, that once essential body part became less important. And here's where things get really interesting. Scientists believe the disappearance of our tail wasn't because nature slowly chopped it off over millions of years. Instead, genetic evidence suggests that a tiny change in our DNA, possibly involving a gene called TBXT, disrupted the normal development of the tail. In evolutionary terms, it was an accident. A microscopic mutation quietly appeared in one population of ancient apes, and individuals born with much shorter tails somehow survived just as well, or perhaps even better, than those with longer ones. Once that happened, natural selection took over. Generation after generation, shorter tails became the new normal until, eventually, there was no tail left at all. It sounds almost unbelievable. One small genetic typo, and millions of years later, an entire family of species would be walking around tailless. But losing a tail wasn't simply about getting rid of something unnecessary. It changed the entire architecture of our bodies. Without a heavy tail pulling behind us, our pelvis, spine, and muscles gradually evolved in new ways. Much later, when our ancestors began walking upright across open landscapes, a tailless body made that transition easier. You could say that every step you've ever taken on two legs is connected, in one way or another, to a mutation that happened millions of years before humans even existed. Of course, evolution never gives gifts for free. That same transformation may have left us with a price to pay. Some scientists suspect that the changes which removed our tail also made the lower spine more vulnerable. Back pain, slipped discs, and certain birth defects affecting the spine may all be distant echoes of an evolutionary compromise made by our ancestors. In other words, if you've ever stood up after sitting too long and your back sounded like a bowl of breakfast cereal, you might have 20 million years of evolution to thank. And yet, despite losing such a useful body part, our ancestors didn't become weaker. They became different. They climbed differently. They moved differently. They eventually thought differently. Evolution isn't about building the perfect creature. It's about making just enough changes to survive whatever the world throws at you. So why did humans lose their tails? Not because we didn't need them overnight. Not because nature had a master plan. But because one tiny genetic change happened to open a completely different path. One that eventually led to apes, then to humans, and finally to a species capable of asking questions about its own past. Which means the next time you wonder why humans don't have tails, the better question might be this: if we had never lost them, would we still be human?